Hey everybody, this is your host, Eric Simone, and I wanted to thank you for listening today. This podcast is all about life struggles and the relatable human stories that provide hope and encouragement to us all. You are not alone, and whatever you're going through in life, I hope this podcast uplifts you and encourages you to pursue Jesus and rest in his peace. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to episode 3 of HeartShare. My name is Eric Simone, your host. And today we have a very special guest. She's actually a very good friend of mine. Her name is Jessica, and she is going to be sharing her amazing story, how she overcame drug addiction through the love of Jesus Christ. So without further ado, here's her story.
I was addicted to drugs for a pretty good portion of my life, through my young teenage life into my early 20s. And I suffered from an addiction to heroin. It didn't start off as heroin. It started off as with marijuana and drinking and partying and that type of lifestyle that led me gradually into that type of lifestyle. I never thought I would. I don't think anybody who gets addicted to that type of drug starts off like that. But my childhood was, and my upbringing was very dysfunctional. And I'm not saying this as an excuse to say this is why I did, because there's people that have chosen this lifestyle in the past that did have good upbringings, and I know people, but chose to go down the wrong path. And I believe that, yes, my childhood and upbringing had a big influence on who I am even today and what the choices I made because of what I knew. But this is basically my story of what led, what caused me to lead into that type of drug. I never really ever felt like I fit in. Growing up, I didn't have much encouragement through my parents. They both were addicted. My mom was an alcoholic, and so was my father, addicted to crack cocaine. He was a functional addict, and I just... So that was the type of lifestyle that I grew up in, and that's kind of what I grew to know, and thinking that that was normal. I never knew why I felt the way I felt. Today I can see why, but so going through as a young girl, just feeling lost and not accepted anywhere I went, I would, seek approval through my friends, and I started hanging out with the wrong crowd, and it led me to, partying and smoking weed at a young age. And I knew that I was a good kid. I just didn't have the right direction and guidance. So I kind of just did what I wanted to do. Although my parents, when they did try to discipline me, I rebelled because I didn't have much respect for them. And my dad's way of disciplining me was physical and verbal, so that just pushed me away more. And that's all they knew. So fast forwarding up until my high school years, I started partying a lot. And there was a lot of things that I was trying to numb from and numb the pain from, and mentally and emotionally. So I continued to drink all through high school. I ended up dropping out of high school, and I still tried to continue my education. And then I got into a relationship with a man who was about 3 or 4 years older than me when I dropped out of high school. And he was going down a very good path at the time, but we were with school and things, but we were both drinking together, and that wasn't good. So I basically just, when we started partying together, it was that eventually the relationship, it started to become dysfunctional, and it wasn't good. And when you're not really healthy yourself, I don't think you know how to have a healthy relationship.
Sure.
So, I did go back to school, and I was trying to finish my education. I was working at the same time. We moved in together, and we got a house together. And then eventually the type of people that were coming over were with a lot more harder drugs, and it just started to separate us even more. And I ended up using using pills for the first time because I wanted to kind of be wherever he was at, because I knew we were separating. I didn't want him to leave. So I thought if I did what he was doing, I could get him back or bring him back closer to me. And little did I know that that wasn't the right way. But eventually, of course, it led to my heroin addiction. And we ended up splitting paths. So I was left with really nowhere to go. And he went off and he went to jail, and then he began to get his life clean over the years. I ended up going down the wrong path, even worse, with heroin, and it led me into jail. And I just, I was in and out of jail fighting probation all the time. I'd go to jail and I'd get clean, and then I'd go back out into my same environment. And it was a constant battle, a constant fight. And I wanted so bad to change, but I just couldn't, because the drug was so powerful, and the depression what it does to your mind was just so intense that I didn't, it's not just something that you can just overcome overnight. What it does to you chemically is not good, and it takes time to heal. And I didn't realize that or understand that, so I kept going back to self-medicate because of the depression and the anxiety. And I didn't know Jesus at the time. But there came a point of just the cycle, the revolving door of going in and out of jail and just living the life on the streets was just, I started living a way that I would never have saw myself. And it was just, I had so much shame that only Jesus could have healed that. And I believe to this day, he was with me, even though I didn't know he was there. He was chasing me. And there was a point in my life where I surrendered to him, my heart to him, even though I didn't understand it. I just knew that he was knocking at my heart's door. And I knew that he felt real to me. I didn't know him, but I wanted to know him. So I listened to these pastors and these women that were ministering to me, and I accepted him in my heart. And I just said, I don't know what you're doing, but I want something different, and I want to know you more. And at that point, I believe was my breaking point. There was a lot that had happened. I had lost my mom at the time. She was very ill. I had taken care of her. And she passed. And there's a lot to the story. I'm fast forwarding through a lot of it, but my mother, when I lost my mother, I lost it completely. And I didn't know how to handle the pain. I didn't know how to handle it, just like a normal person, who was healthy and would be able to probably cope. At the time, I couldn't, because I was still healing emotionally, mentally, and physically, and spiritually. But I do know that when I did accept him in my heart, I do know there was a change. Although I did go back, there's something different. And it was like there was a covering over me. And that's true. There was a covering over me. I was saved. I was redeemed, but I didn't know it. So, of course, fighting against my own will with his will, I continued to seek him. I connect with people, and I would get involved in meetings, and I would go to churches a lot, and it was like he surrounded me with people and love that I'd never had. As it was almost like as a child, like all the feeling unaccepted, the unworthiness. I wasn't good enough to be loved. I hated self-hatred. I had so much hurt in me that I didn't realize why I kept going back to the drugs. It's because of all the soul wounds inside, and he was healing me through the people that he was surrounding me with. It's like he brought me a whole new family of people that just covered me and loved on me until I could love myself. And I just began, even there would be times that I would go back, but it was less and less each time. It was less and less. It was almost like I would keep less short accounts with God, and I began to know his character and him as a father, and know that he cared for me, and that that my life was worth living. And I had to begin to explain heroin addiction. It's something that the mind chemically, it takes about 6 months to a year for a person to even become chemically, I don't know how to align, basically, to where your chemicals in your brain are healthy enough, where you've built back more dopamines and endorphins. And because that type of drug, it dies off, because it relies on all that, the drug, to give it to you. So your mind is a wonderful thing, and it does heal itself. But with Jesus, it was like the prayer that I got, it was almost like he was expediting my healing in my mind and healing me emotionally, and things were just, it's like I knew it was him. And as I was growing to know who he was, and I was still experiencing his healing, and I just continued to seek him through
That's
it.
awesome.
And
so if you were able to give advice or to tell something to somebody who went through what you went through, what would it be? How would you speak to them? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say that there really is hope, and for this person, because I don't care what your past is. I don't care where you've been. I don't care what you've done. Jesus is real, and he wants to give you life. He wants to let you have life here, not just eternally, but here on earth. And he wants you to know that there is healing and there's redemption, and that it's not too late, that you're not unrepairable, that you're not too far gone, that he can't help you. Because I felt like that. I felt like I was too far gone. And I was at the point that the world would look at me and say, she's a lost cause. Like, I mean, it was just, I was ready to give up, but it's like he rescued me. He literally kidnapped me and rescued me. And I know my story may not be the same as everyone else's, but I do know that when we cry out to him, even if we don't understand, he will hear you. He does hear the cry of those who are brokenhearted. He doesn't look over those. He hears those. And it's when we cry out in humility and cry out and surrender, and when we've had enough, he will help you. And there is life, and I know a lot of times there's life after, even in recovery, because he wants to use your life. He has a purpose for your life, even when you don't think he does. He wants to use whatever you've been through, every hurt, because there's so many people out there that have been hurt, and they have no idea that there's hope out there. There's real healing, a real God, a real Jesus that is your friend and your father, that wants to take you above and beyond, more than you can ever ask, think, or imagine. but that takes you having to surrender it.
A special thank you to Jessica for coming on and sharing her amazing story and her amazing testimony and how God has changed her life. Folks, if you have a testimony or if you know somebody that does, let me know. Send me an email, send me a Facebook message, send me a message on Instagram. Let me know, and I would love to have you on the show. Again, this podcast is to create a platform where people can share their stories so it can impact and encourage others. Thanks again for listening to today's episode. I hope this podcast has blessed you. Feel free to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook and share with your friends and family. Till next time, and God bless.